My parents cut my hair while I slept so I'd look less pretty at my sister's graduation, so I took revenge. I woke up in the middle of the night with a freezing chill crawling down my neck. A strange emptiness spread from the back of my head, as if something had been silently taken away. The room was dim, but I could still catch a faint metallic scent, sharp, bitter, and familiar. My trembling hand reached for my neck. And then I saw them long, dark chestnut strands scattered across the pillow like remnants of a soul that had just been severed. I jumped out of bed, my heart racing erratically. My footsteps dragged across the carpet as if my body had lost all weight, stopping in front of the mirror. The mirror didn't lie. The long hair that once touched my back, the hair I had spent nearly a decade growing, was now jaggedly chopped, uneven strands hanging lifelessly, cut with what felt like disdain. This wasn't a stylish short haircut, it was a declaration of war. I looked around the room, trying to find a reasonable explanation for this nightmare. A break-in? A mad intruder? But then I saw it. The familiar pair of crafting scissors lying neatly on my desk, the same ones my mother used to clip coupons and old receipts. Right beside them was a small sticky note, the handwriting messy but unmistakable. "Don't worry, short hair makes you less noticeable. Today is Emma's day. Don't be selfish." Signed, Mom. I didn't cry, I didn't even scream. I just stood there for a few seconds, feeling like the sound had been drained from the entire world. Then my knees gave out. I collapsed to the floor, clutching the strands of my hair like they were the last pieces of dignity cut away from me in my sleep, without a single word, without the slightest warning. In that moment, I realized, sometimes, the people you call family are the very ones who want you to disappear, just so someone else can shine. If they thought cutting my hair would silence me, they picked the wrong girl. This won't be a story about a girl hidden away. This will be the beginning of something none of them saw coming. My name is Lana, I'm 23 years old. And if there's one thing I've learned earlier than any of my friends, it's this. Fairness doesn't always exist within a family. I was born into a family of 4, but the spotlight only ever shone on 3 people: my parents, and my younger sister, Emma. Emma was the golden child. From a young age, she had big sparkling eyes, a radiant smile, and a voice that rang out with confidence. Whenever guests came over, my mother would proudly parade Emma out, like she was some rare gem. "She's taking ballet, and she's excelling in French too," she'd gush. And me? I was left in the kitchen washing glasses, or sitting quietly in my room. If someone asked about me, my mother would just smile and say, "Lana's such a good girl. Never causes any trouble." I didn't cause trouble. But no one remembered me either. I was the background child, always agreeable, always stepping aside, always disappearing at the right time. While Emma had piano lessons since she was 5, I taught myself guitar from old books borrowed at the library. When Emma had a collection of princess dresses, I wore hand-me-downs from a cousin. But I didn't complain. I believed that if I was good enough, I'd be loved. And yet, it felt like all my efforts were always dismissed. I had been a straight-A student for 12 consecutive years. But during the parent-teacher conference, my mother merely gave a flat smile and said, "That's it? Why not try entering a beauty pageant like Emma, so you won't be so dull?" One time, I successfully applied for a scholarship that covered an entire year of tuition. My father glanced at the acceptance letter and said, "Good. But keep it quiet. Emma is heartbroken after her breakup." I remember clearly the first time Emma got her heart broken. She sobbed uncontrollably because a classmate unfollowed her on Instagram. The entire family dropped everything. Mom ordered pizza, Dad brought out wine, and the whole evening turned into a candlelit comfort party wrapped in blankets. And me? I sat quietly in the corner, studying for my midterms. No one asked me a single thing. Back in 11th grade, Emma was chosen to model for a teen magazine. My mother invited the whole extended family over to show off, her daughter on the cover. They enlarged the poster and hung it right in the center of the living room. And me? One day, when I let my hair grow just past my shoulders, my mother frowned and said, "That length only hides your face. Why not cut it short and neat?" When I responded, she added, "You only highlight what's worth showing, and your hair won't make you stand out anyway." I wasn't the type to wear makeup, not one to draw attention, not someone who wanted to be in the spotlight. But like every other girl, I wanted just once to see myself as truly beautiful in someone else's eyes. Emma's graduation, that was the moment I had waited for all year. Not because I wanted to compete, but because I had picked out a navy silk dress bought with money I earned from my part-time job. I had taken care of myself, believing this would be the first time I stepped into a crowd not as someone's shadow. The first time I wouldn't need permission to exist, I would simply be me. I had imagined that day in my head hundreds of times. I would arrive early, smile and greet relatives. I'd walk confidently with my long, neatly kept hair as a silent statement that I too deserved to be seen. I would speak during the ceremony because I was the one invited to represent the student mentor group. I thought, if I did well enough, if I didn't bother anyone, if I looked decent and kind enough, then maybe, just maybe, my parents would look at me with pride. But they didn't see me that way. They saw me as a threat, as if by simply daring to look beautiful I might steal Emma's light. I once believed that a parent's love was unconditional. That no matter how quiet, how different, or how unremarkable you were, they would love you simply because you were their child. But that night, sitting on the floor, holding the strands of hair cut from my head by the very people who brought me into this world, I came to a painful realization. Not everyone who gives you life wants to see you shine. Sometimes, they just want you to shrink, to fade away, so that another child can glow fully unshadowed, even when that shadow is their own blood. And the cruelest part? I had once accepted that. Until that night. The night a piece of me was cut away not by scissors, but by betrayal disguised as family love. And from that night on, I knew, if I wanted to protect my worth, I would have to rise on my own. No longer waiting for recognition, no longer staying silent. That night, the house was unusually quiet. No music from Emma's room, no television sounds from the living room, not even the usual clinking of dishes as my mother cleaned the kitchen. Just the glow of a warm yellow light from the kitchen and a strange scent in the air, something herbal, but with a sharp, sugary edge. Nothing like the ginger tea I usually drank. I was about to go to sleep when my mother walked in, holding a porcelain cup with a faded rose pattern. She smiled softly, a smile that lacked its usual sharp edge. "Drink this, Lana, it's chamomile tea. Helps you sleep well. You need to look fresh tomorrow, it's graduation day, after all." I was a little surprised. My mother had never brought me tea before. She had never cared whether I slept well or not. But the way she handed me the cup natural, steady made me feel foolish for even thinking of refusing. For the first time in years, I felt like I was being included in the family picture, even if just as a background color. I took a sip. The tea was sweeter than usual. A hint of syrupy sweetness that left my throat strangely dry. But I didn't think much of it. I drank the rest, placed the cup on the table, and told myself not to question a rare moment of care. When I opened my eyes, the sky hadn't fully brightened yet. But something felt wrong. My body was heavy, as if I had just crawled out of a deep, dreamless sleep. My neck was cold, and there was a strange emptiness at the back of my head, a hollow space I had never felt before. I reached up to my head. Nothing was there. I bolted out of bed, looked into the mirror, and my throat released a scream that didn't sound human. My hair, the waist-length hair I had cared for with all the patience and tenderness I could give over nearly a decade, was gone. Sloppily cut, uneven chunks missing, as if someone had ripped it away in my sleep on purpose. Worse, my eyelashes. One side still long, the other trimmed short to the roots. I looked at myself and couldn't recognize who I was. My scream echoed through the silent house. But no one came. No one opened a door to ask what had happened. I went downstairs. My mother sat calmly at the dining table, stirring her coffee. She looked at me over the rim of her steaming cup, her eyes showing no surprise, no guilt, only a quiet stillness, like I had simply spoken too loudly while Emma was sleeping. "It's just hair," she said, as if she'd broken a nail. "You should focus on supporting your sister." Don't make a scene. Ah. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father, still in his pajamas, sat at the other end of the table, holding the morning paper. He didn't even look at me. Just said one thing, so detached it chilled me. Don't mess things up. Emma needs a perfect day. No distractions. No distractions. That included me. I stood there in the kitchen, with my butchered hair and a soul that felt like it had shattered inside my chest. It didn't feel like anger, it was worse, it was emptiness. That moment when you realize you weren't just betrayed, you were deemed a nuisance. An unsightly backdrop that needed to be removed. I didn't cry, I just turned away, silently pulled my phone from the pocket of my hoodie, and switched on the voice recorder. I started recording everything. Every word. Every careless remark. Every glance that used to make me wonder if I was just too sensitive. Now I knew it wasn't my imagination. They truly wanted me to disappear from the family portrait just because I might look prettier on Emma's big day. I walked back to my room, locked the door, sat on the floor, and replayed old voice recordings I had saved for therapy. Phrases like, "Lana should know her place in this family. Don't let her post photos with Emma, it makes everything look cheap. With hair that long, her sister fades into the background." I used to think those were just throwaway comments. But pieced together, they formed a clear picture of favoritism, of deliberate exclusion, of emotional manipulation wrapped in the disguise of family love. As I sat there, in the dim early light with strands of hair scattered at my feet, I knew this was no longer just about a haircut. This was about my life, my worth, something I would have to protect myself. And if they thought I would stay silent, endure it, and show up to graduation with a butchered head and a fake smile, then this time, they were wrong. I would not show up as a shadow. I would walk in like the first thunderstorm of the season, quiet, but tearing through every false mask they had spent years building. I called Nina at nearly 6 a.m., my voice still shaking. The phone rang only twice before she picked up. Nina was the only person in 4 years of college who had truly seen me not as someone's eldest daughter, not as Emma's shadow, but as a person with her own thoughts, her own feelings, her own worth. I need you. I didn't need to say anything more. She simply replied, "Send me your location, 15 minutes. When Nina arrived, I hadn't even washed my face. My hair, torn and ragged, hung down like a living accusation. She froze at the doorway for a few seconds. Then stepped in, gently closed the door behind her, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "They did this to you?" I nodded. I handed her the note my mother had left on the table, then opened my phone and let her listen to the recordings I had saved from last night and even the ones I had accidentally captured over the years. One clip had my father telling my mother right after I left the room, "She thinks wearing a nice dress will make her outshine Emma? Wake her up." Dagger. And my mother, cold as ice. "Cut it. That hair is making her think she has value." Nina said nothing. For a long moment, she just sat in silence, breathing deeply. Then she looked straight at me. "We're not staying silent, not this time." I had never seen that look in Nina's eyes before, a calm, focused determination that made me believe she would stand with me, even if the whole world stood against us. We sat down on the bedroom floor, surrounded by the first light of morning, and began to make a plan. Not revenge with screaming, not rage, but with clarity, with truth, and in a way that no one could deny. The first step was the hair. Nina took me to a small salon, where an elderly stylist named Clara gently ran her fingers through the jagged, uneven strands and said softly, "You haven't lost your hair. You're simply beginning a new version of yourself." Within an hour, my hair was cut into a sharp, clean bob neatly framing my jawline, revealing a face no longer hiding behind anything. Nina stood behind me, watching through the mirror, and whispered, "Now you look like someone who could burn the whole house down and still walk away smiling." I laughed for the first time in almost 24 hours. Next step, the speech. I had been invited to speak at the ceremony as the lead mentor for a scholarship program for underprivileged women. At first, I planned to say a few words of gratitude, maybe a light, inspiring message. But now, I would rewrite the entire thing. No more empty platitudes about family and unity. I would tell the truth about what happens behind the doors of a seemingly perfect home. We made a list of voice recordings to use. A few short, clear clips with names, voices, undeniable context. Nina suggested editing them into a short video. Just 45 seconds. That's enough to silence an entire room. God. We also needed to choose the right outfit. Emma would surely appear in a dazzling ball gown, layers of tulle, glittering stones, or feathers. I couldn't and wouldn't compete on that level. I needed contrast not through flamboyance, but with sharp, simple clarity. We chose a crisp white suit. No colorful undershirts, no excess accessories, a clean bob haircut, nude low heels, a square-faced watch. Nina looked at me and said, "You don't need to shine, you just need to show up." That evening, standing in front of the mirror in the dressing room, seeing myself fully for the first time after everything, I no longer saw fragile Lana. I saw a woman who had been stripped not just of hair, not just of trust, but never of worth. A woman about to walk into the ceremony like stepping onto a stage not for applause, but to demand they finally listen. We backed up the recordings onto 3 separate USBs, sent a copy to a lawyer Nina knew, and uploaded another to a backup email. "Just in case someone tries to erase everything," Nina said, half joking. I just smiled. The plan was complete by nightfall. No one knew I would be there. No one knew I would be speaking, and certainly, no one knew I would be bringing evidence. I wasn't looking for forgiveness. I wasn't looking for recognition. I wanted just one thing. The truth. And for once, just once, I wanted them to be unable to deny that I existed. And this time, I would exist in a way no one could erase. The graduation ceremony was held in the city's central hall, a grand space with a high vaulted ceiling, bathed in soft golden light like a Broadway stage. Rows of chairs stretched in perfect lines, nearly all filled. Gentle music played in the background, cameras clicked endlessly, and ball gowns shimmered like butterfly wings fluttering through the crowd. I stepped inside, and at first, no one noticed me. Just a girl in a plain white suit, with sleek, straight-bobbed hair and an unusually calm gaze. But as I began walking down the main aisle just as the crowd was rising to welcome the school's board of directors, a few heads started to turn. They didn't know who I was, but they could sense something different. I passed the family row. My mother sat in the center, father to her left, Emma to her right. She wore a shimmering burgundy gown, her makeup flawless, but the moment her eyes met mine, her lips tightened instantly. The fake smile vanished. What remained was a pale face and a furrowed brow, thick with suspicion. Emma looked at me with a smirk. The kind of smile that said, "I've already won, and you'll do nothing but swallow your pride." She didn't know, no one did, that I wasn't here to support. I was here to exist. The coordinator called my name through the microphone. "Please welcome Lana Whitmore, lead mentor of the Distinguished Women's Scholarship Program, to deliver her remarks." I stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit me full on. A part of me wanted to tremble, to turn and walk back down. But then I remembered the sound of scissors in my head. The taste of that sweet tea. The recordings. And Nina's eyes as she handed me the USB and whispered, "Make sure they never forget you." Too. I stood at the center of the stage, the microphone trembling in my hand, and began with the pre-approved opening. Distinguished professors, board members, families, and fellow graduates. Today is a day full of emotion. A day to honor hard work, sacrifice, and academic achievement. A few light rounds of applause echoed through the hall. I gave a gentle smile, then paused. I removed the microphone from its stand. Stepped forward. The room fell completely silent. I lifted my chin and said, "Before I continue, I want to share something personal. This is the hair that was cut while I slept, not by a stranger, but by the woman I call my mother." The sound shattered the room like a slap to the face. I continued. "Last night, my mother brought me a cup of tea. She told me to sleep early so I could wake up fresh to support my sister on her big day. And when I woke up, the hair I'd spent 10 years growing was gone. Just like my trust. The auditorium was frozen. No one moved. I unlocked my phone and played the first recording. My mother's voice rang out cold and unmistakably clear. She shouldn't be more noticeable than her sister. Cut it, let her remember her place. Murmurs rose from the back rows. A man pulled out his phone to record. A professor in the front row raised his hand to his mouth, eyes glassy. I went on. All my life, I was taught to stay in line. That when your little sister cries, you should disappear so you don't steal her shine. That if you're a bit too pretty, a bit too capable, it's considered selfish. I turned toward the family seats. Emma was no longer smiling. She sat frozen, her hands clutching her dress tight. My mother had bowed her head. My father mumbled something under his breath, but I didn't need to hear it. There are families that don't need to hit you to make you hurt. They just have to look at you as if you were never meant to exist. And the moment you start standing tall, start believing you too deserve to be seen, they'll find a way to cut you out of the frame. I took a deep breath, then closed with this. You can't cut a girl away from her own worth, and sometimes it's that very betrayal that becomes the reason she begins to shine. There was no applause. No collective reaction. Just silence, dense, heavy, and undeniable. I walked off the stage in complete quiet. But I knew that silence was the loudest sound I had ever created. As soon as I stepped down, a middle-aged woman, a professor from the psychology department, hurried over and grabbed my hand. You just did what hundreds of kids in this hall only wish they could. Thank you. Another student approached, holding out his phone. The clip of your speech is already spreading. Someone posted it. I looked up, toward the row where my parents sat. They were getting up awkwardly, looking around like they were searching for an exit. I didn't call out to them. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need a public act of repentance. I just needed them to know that this time, they were the ones being exposed. And I, the girl whose hair had been cut in the dark, was now shining brighter than ever under the lights they once tried to keep me away from. Emma, on the other hand, was panicking. Her eyes wide, lips pressed tight. Then, without warning, she stood. The sharp screech of her chair cut through the silence of the hall, drawing everyone's gaze. Without a word, she rushed down the aisle, her heels clacking hard against the tile. Her ball gown swept the floor in a trail of chaos. Seconds later, the grand doors at the back of the auditorium slammed shut behind her. I got home after nightfall. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, missed calls. Notifications from every social media platform popping up like crashing waves. I hadn't opened anything yet, but I already knew what just happened could no longer be hidden. Nina sent the first link. The video was filmed from the third row, not the best angle, but the audio was crystal clear. My words. My mother's voice. And the silence that followed it had all gone viral on TikTok with a simple caption. They cut her hair so she wouldn't outshine her sister. She cut their silence instead. In just 6 hours, the video surpassed 1 million views. A Twitter user reposted it with the hashtag, #YouCan'tCutPower. More hashtags followed. #graduation sabotage, #family abuse is real, #lettershine. The next day, the school paper ran a full feature on the front page. When scissors try to silence a voice, Lana Whitmore's speech leaves a hall in silence. A local news station reached out by email, asking for a live interview. A student magazine published an editorial titled, "Silence is no longer an option." Then came the email from the prestigious scholarship organization I had once been a mentee of in my freshman year. Silent Daughters Rise. They invited me to become the face of their new campaign, a nationwide initiative for girls who have been overshadowed in their own families. The offer included a full graduate scholarship and a speaking tour across universities nationwide. I stared at the email, my hands still trembling. Not from fear, but because, for the first time, my voice wasn't being strangled. Emma didn't stay silent for long. 3 days after the ceremony, A Reddit forum uncovered an alternate account named at mrocks1999 that had been commenting viciously under every post about me. Don't believe her. She's just jealous. Such a drama queen, she's always playing the victim. Users quickly linked the account to the same email used to order Emma's graduation party dress. The hashtag number Emma exposed began trending. Brands that had partnered with Emma for her graduation promos quietly removed her name from their websites. A cosmetics company issued a statement: "We do not stand by emotional abuse or bullying, whether in families or in public." Emma's boyfriend, a photography major, posted a single story. "Didn't know she hated her sister that much. A week later, he unfollowed her and posted a solo photo from a light festival, no matching rings in sight. My parents tried to stay quiet, but not for long. An email circulated from the school board confirming that both were under investigation for causing emotional harm to a student, especially within an academic environment where I had served as a mentor. Some said they saw my mother crying as she left the disciplinary office. Others said my father had a shouting match with a professor after being confronted in the cafeteria. But I didn't confirm. I didn't follow up. I didn't need to. I knew they were, for the first time, feeling what I had once tasted, being seen through a lens no longer soft, no longer forgiving. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt at peace. When my video hit 10 million views 5 days later, I received a message from a girl in Ohio. "Lana, you gave me the courage to leave home. My mother once told me, don't do anything that makes your sister feel ashamed when people compare you. I used to think it was my fault. Now I know. I'm not crazy. I'm not ungrateful. I was just never allowed to shine. Thank you." I finished reading. I didn't cry. I simply closed my phone and looked out the window. Sunset light flooded the small room Nina and I rented, casting golden hues across my face in the mirror. My hair was short now. But my eyes had never been this sharp. Someone once told me, hair can grow back. But trust once it's cut never reconnects the same way. I no longer believe in family the way I used to. But I believe in myself. And I've learned this. Sometimes, it's not that you were cut out of the story, it's that you were meant to rewrite it. In your own voice. For everyone to hear. And never apologize for standing tall, for speaking up. 3 months have passed since I stepped down from that stage in my white suit, beneath hundreds of stunned stares and a silence as thick as the curtain that fell to end my family's long, quiet performance. From a phone-recorded clip, that story became what many called a wave of awakening in the community. I just saw it more simply. Finally, I had been seen not as a shadow but as myself. The invitations began to pour in. The university sent a formal apology email. A television network invited me to speak on their program, Education and Family Emotions. But one invitation stood out, one I couldn't turn down: a national conference on educational equity and injustice in the home. Themed, The Forgotten Children. When family is the first place that dims your light. I stood on a large stage, facing an audience of hundreds of educators, psychologists, parents, and students. The lights no longer scared me. The microphone no longer made my hands tremble. I told my story not to accuse, but to illuminate, to shine a light on what thousands of other girls have been forced to hide. I spoke with calm conviction, no dramatic highs, no tears, but each word cut deep into the hearts of those who had ever thought, it's just a family matter. After the speech, a woman approached me. She introduced herself as the creative lead for an international education brand. They were launching a global campaign called No More Side Characters, honoring those who were pushed out of the spotlight simply because they didn't fit the main role someone else had scripted. She offered me the position of campaign ambassador and lead content strategist. "We don't need a celebrity," she said. "We need someone who's lived in silence and knows how to use truth to wake up an entire room." I accepted. A few weeks later, I moved to a small coastal city on the West Coast where the morning sun is gentle and the ocean breeze makes you believe that everything can begin again. I used the first round of funding to open a mentoring center for young women who had experienced emotional abuse or image control from within their own families. Nina moved in with me. She took on the role of creative advisor and community engagement lead. We were no longer just two students sharing a dorm, we were two women building a space of light together, a space where no one has to ask for permission just to be seen. The building was only 3 stories, modest in size, but each room had wide windows facing the park. The walls were painted a warm ivory. A small, elegant sign hung above the door. And on the oak front entrance, I had a brass inscription engraved. Your worth is not in the length of your hair, but in how fully you have lived your truth. On opening day, we invited everyone who had messaged me over the past 3 months. A girl from Texas came, someone who had been forced to drop out of school so her brother could afford tuition. A young woman from Arizona arrived, someone whose mother called her invisible for not looking like her beautiful sister. They came carrying old wounds and left with brighter eyes. I no longer sought revenge. I no longer waited for the downfall of those who had once hurt me. Because I realized the thing that truly makes you shine isn't winning in front of someone who tried to silence you. It's standing in the very room that once broke your voice and walking through it with your own words intact. I no longer had long hair cascading down my back, but I had eyes that looked forward without flinching, feet that didn't tremble, and a life I no longer needed permission to live as my true self. And maybe that is the kind of light they were never able to cut. The grand opening of the mentoring center happened on a bright Saturday morning. The air was crisp, sunlight poured through sheer white curtains like a gentle new breath. The crowd wasn't large, but it was enough to fill the main room. Community friends, young women who had messaged me after the clip went viral, and even a few former professors quietly arriving from the university I once attended. Nina stood at the reception table, guest list in hand, her eyes shimmering with conviction. I stood in the corner of the room, just behind the golden-lettered acrylic sign that read, "Your worth is not in the length of your hair, but in how fully you've lived your truth." I was mid-conversation with a 17-year-old girl when the automatic glass door at the front softly slid open. The room dipped into a brief stillness, as if the wind had suddenly shifted direction. I turned my head. My family walked in. My mother entered first, wearing a muted cream outfit, dark sunglasses covering half her face. She moved slowly, as if each step was taken on thin ice. My father followed, silent, shoulders slightly hunched, hands buried in his coat pockets, eyes avoiding contact. Emma trailed behind, the hem of her pastel dress slightly wrinkled, her high heels seemingly unsteady beneath her. She looked down at the floor, avoiding everyone's gaze. The room held its breath for a beat. Some recognized them, but no one spoke. I didn't move. I simply stood still, hand resting gently on the wooden table near the entrance, watching them like a painting I once knew well but now felt too distant to touch. My mother approached the closest. She slowly removed her glasses. Her eyes were red, and yet she wore the same soft smile she'd always used to smooth over moments she couldn't control. "We're proud of you, Lana," she said, her voice steady but hollow. I smiled. A quiet, breeze-like smile. But inside me was a peace so vast, so deep, it lay beyond any place they had ever reached. "I'm proud too," I replied, because finally, I'm no longer anyone's shadow. I didn't say it to wound them. I said it to mark the end. My father stepped forward slightly, his voice low but firm. "Family can always forgive one another." I turned, walked over to the reception desk, where a small wooden box sat neatly on the counter. I placed my hand gently on it, then looked back at them, eyes steady, unwavering, as if no past could distort the clarity of the present. "If you want to apologize," I said, "write it clearly on a feedback card. Here, feelings aren't swept aside like hair on the floor." A wave of silence passed through them. Emma turned slightly away, as if trying to melt into the wall. My mother blinked repeatedly. My father pressed his lips into a tight line. None of them said another word. I turned my back and walked toward the main room, where a group of young women waited for me to speak about the early days of building the center. I didn't look back. I didn't need to look back. Because I knew. I no longer needed them to confirm who I was. They stood there for a long moment. But none of the three stepped up to the box. No one wrote anything. In the end, they left just as they had arrived quietly. Only this time, I wasn't the one left behind. This time, I was ahead leading something far greater than any wound they had left. And when the glass doors closed behind them, it felt like the last dark cloud had finally cleared from my mind. No shouting, no confrontation. I had won. In silence. Through light. I returned to my office after the grand opening had ended. The room was quiet now, lit only by the soft glow of the wall lamps and the sound of wind rustling through the trees outside the window. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat in the familiar single chair, facing the painting I had hung on my first day here, a woman standing in an open field, her hair flying against the wind, her face obscured, but her posture upright, backlit by a burst of golden light. I thought about everything that had happened. About that night I woke in panic, hair scattered across the pillow. About my mother's eyes as she said, "Don't make a scene, this is Emma's day." About the graduation stage, where I stood before an auditorium and told the truth, a truth no one had dared say for years. And I thought about this morning, when my parents stood at the door of the mentoring center, with nothing to shield them but a pair of dark sunglasses and apologies they never wrote down. I used to think my long hair was what made me beautiful. That if I grew it long enough, kept my body slim enough, spoke gently enough, I would be loved. I believed that hair was my ticket into a world where I'd finally be seen. But in the end, it was the moment I dared to stand up with nothing on my head and my trust completely stripped away that I finally began to shine. I want to send this to you, the one watching this video right now. Maybe you're sitting quietly in a room where no one listens. Maybe you're living in a family where you're just the background so someone else can stand in the spotlight. If you've ever been silenced by those who were supposed to love you, please remember, they can cut your hair. They can cut the dreams you never had the chance to speak. They can even cut down your belief in yourself. But they can never cut your voice unless you let them. Speak up. You don't have to shout, just stand up, in your own way. Sometimes, it only takes one voice to help thousands begin to see themselves more clearly. If you've ever been treated like a shadow, if you've ever been placed behind the other sibling, simply because you didn't fit the role they imagined, comment below. Share your story, write it down. Because when you write, you reclaim the power of your voice. And maybe, just maybe, someone else watching this video will read your words and they'll think, "Oh, it's not just me." And just like that, another cycle of silence will be broken. We don't need to rebel to be seen. We just need to show up as we are. No apologies, no permission. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. You are not alone, and you never had to become someone else to be worthy of love. You always were, even if they never saw it. I'll see you in the comments. Let your light begin with your own words, and always remember, scissors are dull, but some girls sharpen.